Next match, Chris Jericho and MJF, now the tag team in the Inner Circle. Always good when MJF plays the part of sidekick like Chill Wills or Edgar Buchanan, one of the old Western sidekicks to the big old cowboy, and they take on the Varsity Blondes, Griff Garrison, and our friend Brian Pillman Jr. And as I was watching Jericho's entrance, I'm thinking, because, you know, a lot of those outlaw wrestlers that they've signed, they've never used on television. And a bunch of the trainees, the paid fans, they're all down ringside. They do this every week. So the paid fans singing the heels entrance music have probably made more money singing it than Jericho has at this point. Don't you think?
It is ridiculous because you see the baby faces and the heels and they're hamming it up. They're singing to each other. They're singing to the camera. It's so
It looks like
stupid.
one of those Southern Baptist revivals when they think God has come down and we're all going to float to fucking heaven. They're singing in joyous praise of each other. My God, they look like they're having more fun than the Soul Train dancers. And it's the baby faces that you can recognize having fun singing the heels music. It makes no sense. MJF grabs the microphone, does a quick promo to remind us that he's the best verbalist in the business since he hasn't had a spotlight on him as a single in months. MJF starts the match out at the first part of it there. He's a brilliant heel because he is completely does different shit than anybody on his program has done or is going to do, and does absolutely nothing at the same time and gets attention on himself, and then immediately tags Jericho, who you would think would be the veteran who would know to do all that shit, bailing out, backing up, drawing attention to himself without doing anything. And he jumps in and goes into running spots with the young guys to show that he can still do it. Jericho does. And he's doing stuff for Brian Pillman, and I get that because he wants to see Brian succeed. And Brian Pillman, while I'm coaching publicly, follow through on your shoot-offs. You've got better cardio than Chris does. He's not doing it because he's blown up. You're young. Follow through on your shoot-offs. As soon as you got the guy's wrist, back him up hard and jerk the fucking guy off the ropes and fucking take a couple of steps following through and shove him with your right fucking arm. It'll look a lot better. They got the heat on Brian, which was the best choice because Brian, I don't know Griff Garrison's background. Brian just looks like he sells better to me. He's a better seller. And I figured that the deal would be that they'd get the heat on Brian. And since they're doing that, they would give Griff the tag because he actually does have great fire on his comebacks. Griff Garrison does. And they'd beat Griff. Because, after all, how many times do you remember we beat up Ricky Morton, gave the hot tag to Robert Gibson, and then fucking tagged Ricky back in and beat him? That's what they did here. I couldn't believe it. Pillman, not Pillman, Jericho and MJF, Flapjack was better this week, boys. I guess I would take credit for it, but I understand this was a taped show, but they tightened up what they fucked up last week. Anyway, that's the thing. Griff Garrison comes in, makes the comeback, good comeback, but then Brian tags himself back in. He got a nice false finish on Jericho, and people popped, but they should have gone right then. After that good false finish that Brian got on Jericho, if they're going to get the heat on Brian and then beat him too, they might as well have done it then. But they tried to set up some more stuff. It got awkward. Then they set up the springboard by Brian. But Jericho hits the Judas on him and then hits the lion salt because he knew he'd fucked up on the previous show. And Tony Schiavone, how about that one? And I swear to God, the announcers mentioned about 3 more times he hit that lion salt. Like I said, it was a good match that showcased the Varsity Blondes without making them either look completely impotent and like schlubs or like they should have beaten MJF and Jericho. It was done in the right place. I wouldn't have got the heat on Brian and beat him too, but I guess because Griff Garrison is their homegrown guy, they want to protect him. But there was not much wrong with this. Except poor Chris is just still, I guess having a bug in his bonnet about proving he can go with the kids. What'd you think?
I think I really wish Brian Pillman Jr. had more chances to get ring time because he improves every time I see him. Physically, he looks more like his dad every time I see him. Not jacked up flying Brian, but just his natural body type. But I think he has a lot of potential. And every time I see him, I think it more and more. And Garrison looks okay too. We'll see what happens with him, but I just wish these guys had a way to get more ring time because I think they do have potential, especially Pillman Jr.
And Garrison's got time to gain some weight. Right now, he's a little on the thin side. He's gonna be hula hooping with that Cheerio.